as artists say, you cannot think about neuroscience or nanotechnologies. You have to start from the needs they have. And the needs are closer to clinical engineering and technology assessment, management than they can be to basic science. Now, we started from this assumption. That's a study we did in 2005, and we all know that medical devices, they are completely different from drugs, for instance, because drugs has been the main core topic for health technology assessment in the past 10, 20 years. And they are different in many aspects. The most relevant for today, for my talk today, is the fact that a medical device is strongly dependent from the environment in which it will be operationalized. It will depend strongly from the user. If you are not skilled in the use of a medical device, the outcome of the surgery will be completely different than if you were skilled. So medical device, compared to drugs, compared to all the other aspects of medicine, are so much dependent from the environment that you cannot take them away. You cannot think in silos. And that's where we started. There is not much in Europe going on about medical devices for low-income settings. And unfortunately, there is even less which is focusing on how those medical devices change their effectiveness, safety, when you use them in a different environment. So we keep thinking to medical devices in the way we do in Europe, and then we just translate the technology in Africa, for instance, where this just cannot work because you don't have anesthesiologists, you don't have the minimum requirement standards we do have in Europe. So we started thinking to that. When I design a medical device in Europe, what do? I have clear in mind international standards, on top of which our government established minimum requirements. I know better the Italian registration, but the situation is not different across Europe, and there are mainly 3 pillars. Those minimum requirements will tell you clearly what is the minimum number of clinicians you need to have in order to do this kind of surgery, what is the minimum number of nurses you need to have if you want to open a new ward for kids. So those are minimum requirements in terms of organizational minimum requirements, and if you are in Europe or in different towns in Italy, you can be sure that the minimum requirement is the same. And same for infrastructure. You know that the microshock risk has to be taken in consideration if you are in a class 1 or class 2 or class 3 environment. And you know that a class 2 medical device can be operationalized only in a context in which there are those minimum requirements. Now, in other words, this means that your medical devices, okay, we know they depend from the users, the patient, even the relative of the patient which entered the hospital for a visit, but they based on those pillars. What happens when those pillars are questioned? That's where we started. Now, I don't really want to bother you with details about standard regulation. I put a few notes on the slides. Timo, if you like, we can circulate the slides later. And I think I wrote also this in a brief paper for this conference, but that's not the point. There are minimum standards. And the concept is, if I start removing the international standard, if I start losing minimum requirements, then my medical device will be less safe and finally will follow down. You are using something which is not working. You are donating a device. What you are really doing, you are killing patients. If you take an incubator in Europe and you donate as it is in Benin, you are killing kids. That's the point. And there is no attention about that. And that's what we are trying to do together with WHO. Now, we did this field analysis. We visited 5 hospitals in Benin. We started from Benin because there was a charity of surgeons going there since 15 years, so it was easier for us to go there. And that's what we found. So this is the voltage on the neutral, it's 5-6 volts. The voltage on the ground was 85 volts. Now, it should be 0 for those of you which are not familiar with those numbers, okay? Why is that? Because for several reasons. This was a lab, this was an adapter, and when I took it off, it had no ground. So what's the point of having an equipotential node if then someone puts an adapter which has no ground? And this hospital in particular, actually, it was built by a very good Italian company. The point is that after a couple of years, they installed conditioners, and they attached the conditioner on the same implant of the surgery theater, which burned completely the inverter, and so they took it off. Because, you know, they burned it because they were applying stuff. So it's not even a problem just of design, because you design, you do something, you put in place, you operationalize, it's working. After 6 months, the local technician arrives and just plug the first cable wherever. That's the level of problems. This was a radiology unit, as you can see, and if we put the attention on the mobile phone, what do you notice? There is perfect field. This was the best place to make a phone call in this hospital, which, let me just say, it was poorly shielded. So if you have done an health technology assessment of this new amazing X-ray technology, and you have not considered the fact that in such an environment, we are killing the administrative people which live behind that wall, that's what you're doing. And this is a side effect which has not been taken into account in our recommendation. So whatever we have done in Europe in terms of assessment of medical device safety, cost, effectiveness, should be questioned. This is the voltage in terms of voltage and time in hours. The upper one is my summer house in Rome. Summer house, they never have, you know, the best implants, but still, come on. You go up during the night, you go down during the day, it's normal, no? The second one is in this hospital in Benin. As you can see, suddenly the voltage jumped down to 350 volts. Now, if you do that 3 times a day, your medical device will burn in 3 days. And that's what happened. Then we complain that 80% of medical devices are not working. Well, I'm surprised they've been working for 6 hours, because they were not conceived for this environment. So that's the issue. How can we complain that the device is not working there? You have to be surprised that your device was working for the first 5 minutes. Okay, that's the same information, it's an histogram. For you to know, this is the same scale. So we have 220 plus or minus 5 in Europe, and here we have something which goes from 150 to 350, which is obviously for the device, for the operator, for the patient, it's dangerous. This is a couple of exemplars of blackouts, several times a day. Okay, this is into the surgical theater, so then they replace the inverter. So as you can see, there is still a continuity. And when you see the plateau, that's because the inverter is actually providing more stable power than the power supply. But look at this. Before the blackout, there are clear trends, which means that those blackouts are not casual. There has to be a reason, because every time there was a blackout, if you observed the first 2 hours before the blackout, you recognize a pattern. How much it costs to us with a Raspberry to build something, to know that something is going to happen, and switch to the inverter before the blackout, so that you avoid the shock that will burn your medical device. So that's 10 euro. It's in the order of hours. Each of those squares is about an hour. Yeah. So it can be done. The problem is that we don't have those information. There are no systematic studies. We covered 5 hospitals in Benin. The way we did, we avoided involving local authorities, because we felt the risk that eventually they may end up bringing you in the only surgery theater, which is working perfectly. So we started bottom up, and we decided where to go, because we want to see the real situation, and that's what we found. I don't know, perhaps I am, biased, but I have been told that, oh, I've seen surgery, they were perfect. How did you go there? Well, the Ministry of Health brought me there. Well, come in my house without noticing, you will see how messy it is. But if I invite you for Sunday, it will be perfect and shiny. So that's the issue, one of the issues. Conclusion. Medical devices are too much dependent from operational conditions, at least because I want to use Italian organization. Organizational, structural, and technological minimum requirements. Now, because of this dependence, results of any, so whatever you know coming from Europe should be questioned, because they were not done keeping in mind those realities. Heterogeneity of operational condition may really make difficult to translate our results. So this is from the health technology assessment point of view. But there is a lesson to learn also about the design. So if you just focus on the medical device without considering the operational condition, you are treating the symptoms, but not the disease. So you will change the device which was broken, you will bring a new one, and it will be broken in a few days. You are bringing there the best technology you have, but if you don't know that they don't have anesthetic doctors, you are killing patients. Easy like that. So we should be more attentive to the environment, and so we should, and those are IFMBE recommendations, so we are working on the guidelines regarding health technology assessment in low-income countries, specifically for medical devices. Okay, we will not focus too much on drugs this time, but there are lessons to learn also if you are thinking to design. It is not possible that we don't consider the environment, or that we pretend or try to make their environment standardized according to European regulation. This is a failure. We may aim to be there in 20 years, but in the meantime, we need to invent a way to make our medical devices more resilient. If you want to do a donation from few 6 months maximum, there will be a strong recommendation from IFMBE, which I'm confident we will get endorsed by WHO, which has to say, dear donators, we appreciate your effort, but you need to recondition the medical device before donating, making the medical device resilient. Otherwise, what you're doing is not something good. You are killing kids in Africa. And this is where IFMBE is going. So artists, you invited us to join you in Pisa. I would like to also invite Pisa to join the International Federation. So perhaps we will meet somewhere in the middle.
We are members of the IFMBE.
Not of my working group. So, sorry, I will narrow it down. Please join my working group, because we need people like you, which has knowledge and empathy. Okay, normally I close. Okay, that's what I anticipated before. So we should make medical device and donors aware that we need to make medical device resilient to operational conditions. I normally thank my labs. Oh well, let me take this opportunity. We have an open position for a PhD student in case you want to do that. But this time I want to thank the charity which actually made it possible for us to visit Benin. They go in Benin since 15 years. Before that they were going in the Amazonic forest. And they do things amazing. I mean, I've seen those friends being in subject theaters 12 hours a day, 17 surgery on row. And I mean, what they do, it's impressive. And I also would like to take this opportunity to promote the summer school that Nicholas is organizing in Greece within the IFMBE, but actually health technology assessment and health technology management of medical device for low-income setting, it's actually one of the core topics of the school. So please consider joining us there, because there will be a lot of fun. Okay, thank you.